Check out today's piece of fan art. It's a fan servant design of Ullr, the Norse god of sports and the hunt. It's interesting because most depictions of the guy have him being older with a prominent beard. Here, I'm getting Dragon Ball vibes, which is pretty cool. Thank you, Spiders123. Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Dai here. French filmmaker Jean Renoir once said that a director makes only one film in their life. Then they break it up and make it again. While this is quite hyperbolic, I think it's important to keep in mind when studying the career of any given filmmaker. Makoto Shinkai is a brilliant creator, deservedly earning his title as a modern Miyazaki. What's great about his works is that they show not only how their visuals and storytelling continue to improve as he becomes more acclaimed, but they also seem to show a transformation in his own perspective on life. At least, that's how I've chosen to see them. From Shinkai's self-made Voices of a Distant Star, all the way up to his latest masterpiece, Weathering with You, I've noticed a fundamental change in the emotional payoff of his films. The romantic elements in Shinkai's films brilliantly demonstrate how love is temporal, beautiful yet fleeting. They feature lovers being pulled apart by life's various circumstances, showing these characters as they move forward and reflect on what once was. The love they experience is important, forever shaping them, but the relationships themselves inevitably come to an end. Only more recently have Shinkai's films pushed his characters to stand up and fight for their love, rebelling against circumstances to keep their relationships alive. I find it fascinating how, as a teenager growing up on his earlier works, I've gone through a similar transformation. To me, that's a testament to our human ability to emotionally connect with the fictional ideas we share, how one person's vision can resonate or conflict with another's. Of course, I don't mean to say that people are in any way compelled by the fiction they consume, but rather, when we open our hearts to one another, we can form a more profound understanding of life. Thus, today, I want to go over some of his iconic films in order, while comparing them to events in my life as I grew up with them. Before ever hearing about Makoto Shinkai, I already had my own perspective on love. I was a naive romantic with little experience beyond what I'd seen in stories. A lot of anime I'd seen showed the beauty of falling in love, encouraging me to seek it out for myself. Among those influences, one that stuck out to me was Lunar 2 Eternal Blue Complete for PlayStation 1. It covers the budding romance between our protagonist Hiro and a sheltered girl from beyond the planet named Lucia. They share in a compelling adventure, but after defeating their common enemy, Lucia returns to her home to rest eternally by herself, tragically parting with Hiro for what she believes is his own good. Before the credits roll, Hiro vows to find a way to reunite with her, leading into a post-game epilogue where the player is tasked to do just that. Knowing where to go is quite cryptic, but eventually you explore different dungeons, collecting the catalysts needed to teleport Hiro to Lucia's home. It's a one-way trip, so Hiro says goodbye to his party of friends to be with the woman he loves. And in the end, Lucia is delighted to find that Hiro chose her over living on his own planet. Just as Hiro declared, he found a way to be with Lucia regardless of their predicament, and that encouraged me to think of my own love the same way. I was dating a girl in high school, and at the time, I figured there wasn't anything I couldn't do to hold that bond together, which is why the first Shinkai film I ever saw, Voices of a Distant Star, was so interesting to me. By all accounts, I saw this film as a romantic tragedy, a story of two teenage lovers suffering through what is likely the worst long-distance relationship imaginable. The girl, Mikako, is piloting a mech out in space on a mission that takes her further and further from her boyfriend, Noboru, who remains on Earth. As the distance between them grows larger, the two try and stay in contact through text messages, but this becomes agonizing for them, as their responses take longer and longer to reach each other. The delay between emails starts as days, moving into a year, up to several years. The time they spend waiting is far longer than the time they were ever together. By the end, they can only cling to the idea that, perhaps, they are able to imagine each other's thoughts, hoping that those can transcend time and space. While this story is certainly depressing, I wouldn't necessarily call it pessimistic. It's still possible that Mikako will finally return home, and if not, Noboru appears to be entering the military, hopefully for the chance to follow after her. Regardless, it's steeped in the theme of nostalgia, cherishing the love that was, even if they can never experience it again. When I saw it, I took it for its romantic fantasy, lucky that I would never have to experience something like that myself. Admittedly, I never watched his film The Place Promised in our early days, back when it came out. Had I done so, I may not have viewed Shinkai's earlier career as so bleakly pessimistic at all. It tells the story of a group of friends, 2 boys and a girl, who aspire to build an airplane and fly to a mysterious tower in Hokkaido. 2 of these friends, Hiroki and Sayuri, fall in love, but are separated when Sayuri is abducted for research pertaining to alternate worlds. She's stuck in a slumber of sorts, until the boys free her years later, fulfilling their promise to reach the tower, this time destroying it to free Sayuri's mind, or something like that. Ultimately, the film's couple Hiroki and Sayuri are able to start their romance anew. Instead, what really gave me the impression that Shinkai thinks love is but a temporary thrill that inevitably fades away is his iconic film 5 centimeters per second. It's a beautiful film, but both its characters and story irk me. It tells the story of Takaki, a young boy who falls in love with his classmate Akari. Neither of them admit their romantic feelings, even as Akari is forced to move away with her parents. But when Takaki's family has to move to the opposite side of Japan, the 2 decide to meet in person one last time. Depressingly, their meeting is challenged by a snowstorm that delays their trains. Regardless, they wait through it and finally meet in the cold of night, where they kiss and spend time until morning talking for the last time. While the 2 of them both prepared love letters, they didn't exchange them, instead just accepting they couldn't be together. I say accept, but Takaki never really gets over his feelings. Even into adulthood, he thinks about her, suffering through the news that she's getting married to another man. At the end of the film, Takagi and Akagi meet on opposite sides of a railroad crossing. Before they can interact, a train passes by, and while Takagi waits for it to pass, Akagi is gone by the time the path is clear. It's a sad, bittersweet reminder that, yes, time moves on and people change. We do things we regret, like missing opportunities, but in my opinion, it lacks a backbone. Throughout all of high school and some years as an adult, Takaki simply lets the love of his life go for what I consider to be a trivial reason. He continually drafted emails to her, but never sent them. Rather than putting up a fight to pursue what is clearly the most important thing in his life, he gives up, left only to console himself with memories. Around the time this film came out, the girlfriend I had mentioned broke up with me, more or less leaving me with only my senior year of high school to pick up the pieces of my life and decide my future. This casted me into somewhat of an edgy period. Depressing works like this resonated with me, and just like Takaki, I felt like I just had to accept what life threw at me. Of course, there was little I could do to salvage that relationship, nor would those attempts truly fix things, even if I made them. That relationship was over, but that didn't mean I should have just gone with the flow. Instead, I decided to focus on myself, so that for my next relationship, I'd have more to offer. I realized that, in my case, my ex-girlfriend simply didn't see me the way I saw her, and ironically, that meant I was seeing her as someone different from who she really was. Takaki, on the other hand, didn't have that problem. He had a requited love, and gave it up without so much as trying to communicate his feelings and find a solution. It was this realization that let me find a new love in the woman who is now my wife, Ari-chan. I noticed ahead of time that once we graduated college, we'd have to pick a trajectory for our lives, and so I proposed to her so we could move forward together. I'm afraid I must consider Children Who Chase Lost Voices to be an outlier. Compared to Shinkai's more realistic works, Children Who Chase Lost Voices is more of an homage to the various Miyazaki films that inspired him. I must say, however, that the film still deals with lovers being pulled apart, in how one of its characters, Morisaki-sensei, hopes to resurrect his late wife, Lisa. I never really associated this film with the other works regarding his theme on relationships, because for once, the circumstances pulling them apart wasn't superficial. As far as I'm concerned, 2 lovers separated by death aren't really apart so long as they cherish what they have forever. Because of this, the next Shinkai work to really provoke me was The Garden of Words. In short, it's the story of a student, Takao, who falls in love with a teacher named Yukari. Both of them skip school and meet each other in a park pavilion to sit out the rain. Takao is a struggling apprentice shoemaker, while Yukari distances herself from her job to avoid gossip and bullying. As he makes her a pair of shoes, the two of them find shelter in each other, learning how to stand tall and face their problems. Sadly, because of their age difference, however, they are unable to be together. And if you're not paying attention, it may seem that their relationship ends after a final emotional encounter. After the credits, however, Takao declares his intent to go find her when he grows up and can metaphorically walk on his own. Because of that, I really wouldn't call this outlook pessimistic. In fact, it's quite the opposite. But it did make me realize that in literally all of Shinkai's romantic films, the happy ending they strive for either never comes or is never actually shown in the film itself. At best, they always end on a bittersweet aspiration for the future. The part I most want to see, the part where the hero overcomes the odds in the name of love, is usually only a possible afterthought rather than a key moment in the film. Thankfully, Shinkai's following two films, Your Name and Weathering with You, finally deliver in that regard. Honestly, if you haven't seen these movies yet, you owe it to yourself to do so. In fact, stop now and go see them, then come back and finish this video. You won't regret it. While it still features lovers being pulled apart, Your Name is thematically built around the bonds that hold us together across time. It tells the story of Mitsuha and Taki, who transcend distance and time to body swap with each other. This is explained by Musubi, the belief that time isn't a straight line, but rather a weave that intersects at parts. Resulting from this, Mitsuha, a girl who dreams of the big city, winds up occasionally living in the body of Taki, who just so happens to be a Tokyo student. At the same time, Taki winds up living as Mitsuha in her rural mountain town. While the two are able to communicate through notes they leave for each other, they don't realize that they're actually living years apart from one another. In Taki's present, Mitsuha is actually dead, a victim of a falling meteor striking her hometown. The only time the two of them ever met in person, Taki didn't know her due to the temporal offset. As tragic as this is, it actually serves as a boon, because it allows Taki to warn Mitsuha of the incoming strike and in turn evacuate the town to avoid casualties. As this meddles with their overall timeline, Taki and Mitsuha appear to forget each other. That is, until they both coincidentally reunite in Tokyo some years later. They meet at what are now famously the stairs of Suga Shrine, and while they appear to pull something reminiscent of 5 centimeters per second's train ending, they instead remark that they may know each other, ensuring that the two lovers have a future together. This reunion finally provides us with the happy ending I've been talking about, showing us on screen the lovers fighting for and successfully overcoming their circumstances. This trend continues with Weathering with You, more or less serving as a sequel. It stars Hodaka, a high schooler who runs away from home and meets a girl named Hina, who has the ability to control the weather. The two fall in love as Hodaka helps Hina find a way to use her power to make everyone in Japan happy, warding off the season's especially intense rain. However, this gift of hers comes with a price. Changing the weather renders her a human sacrifice. In exchange for stopping the rain, she is ultimately going to be consumed, dispersed as water within the clouds in the sky. When confronted by this harsh reality, Hodaka risks his life to journey to the sky and bring Hina home, choosing a life with her even if it means Japan is enveloped by prolonged rainstorms that ultimately flood the island. Even the people in their lives that wanted clear weather the most ultimately deal with the rain, admitting that putting such a burden on two innocent teens is just unfair. Even though Hodaka eventually returns home to finish school, he's shown at the end of the film coming back to Tokyo to reunite with Hina. It's absolutely beautiful, and as someone who's been married for over 7 years now, I appreciate Shinkai adding these emotional payoffs in his films. In fact, based on interviews with Shinkai, he wanted a core element of the film's story to be about a character who was willing to follow through on a selfish wish, to follow his heart in a time where people are otherwise too afraid to say or do anything against the grain of society. I'm obviously putting that into my own words, but honestly, I feel Hodaka's determination is what I've been wanting to see in Shinkai's films from the onset. Because of this, these two films are my absolute favorites in his career, not simply due to their fantastic production values. I understand that this pessimism I refer to is my own interpretation of Shinkai's works. It's a blanket narrative I put over them based on my own experiences. I can't possibly know exactly what that genius is thinking. But this is definitely how I, an adult who grew up with his earlier films in my late teens, feel about them. I'm curious to know what sort of impact Makoto Shinkai's films have left on you. Which one is your favorite or least favorite? Let us celebrate his legacy in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and, most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of my anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content. If you want to support me directly, there are now 3 ways that all provide the same benefits. You can click Join here on YouTube, or join Patreon or Subscribestar for access to exclusive vids and early access. As always, celebrate your fandom.